Today I'm talking about the kind of failure that most people run away from, and that's the kind that tests your character when nobody's watching. My guest today is Abhra, the host of Stories in Stanza, a podcast that explores failure, history, and the poetry of life. Before he created that and started leading those conversations, he was living his own test of resilience. I believe that relationships exist to wake us up. Some serve that purpose by falling apart, and some do it by enduring. Abhra's story is one of staying and struggling and choosing presence over escape. And through it, he found clarity that shaped his perspective on failure, love, and what it means to truly show up. Abhra, welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
We've recorded a podcast before on your podcast, and what really strikes me about you is you bring this lightness, and it feels just like you're balanced, and I get the sense of how open you are, and I think that's really quite lovely.
Thank you so much, Jeff. If I look back at myself, I struggled to be who I am for a very, very long time. And now that I know who I am, I feel that I have nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of, and nothing to keep from anyone who wants to find out. And there are things that I learned the hard way, but I'm glad that I learned it. And my podcast, Stories and Stanza, is an attempt to share that with the world.
And I think we need more of that. I think the world can be a little cynical, myself included. So I like that you're bringing that lightness in. So let's talk about your story. And I think this is really interesting in that you went from, well, what you were describing, you had this heaviness that you came with, and then what was the thing that switched you into that lightness, or what was the start of that?
Absolutely. So it was very interesting that I have a pivotal moment in my journey, and I had a few difficult years, and we will explore that throughout our conversation. So the challenges that I see is I struggled with anger and frustration most of the times. So let's say I struggled with emotions, and then I struggled with physical health. I struggled with my marriage for a couple of years, and I was telling myself that I cannot always be angry. So that is the state that I remember before the transformation began. And then I had just, it was in the early days when I was considering whether I should start a podcast. And one of my good friends, she said that, pointed me to a somatic workshop. And I attended that somatic workshop, and I heard some things which nobody ever explained to me in my life before. And I became curious. And then I started reading, working on it, and adopting it in my life and in my routine. And it took some time, but I felt that I was no longer angry. I felt very light if I can compare that to a physical definition, that I felt that I was burdened by something on my shoulders. I don't know what it was, but there was something. Let's say it's a mixed bag of stress, responsibility, anxiety, and a number of things, and the challenges I had because of my health and my partner's health. So when I started accepting the knowledge that came to me from the somatic workshop, and then further reading and working on that, then I felt I am a different person. And I am thankful that this transformation happened, because if I look back in my family, I felt that, there was some difficult moments, but when I started building that emotional intelligence and that awareness, I started looking at everything with an immense clarity, and which makes me who I am today.
You make personal transformation sound so easy.
It wasn't so easy. It was very difficult for couple of years to me. And when I was going through that phase, when I didn't have the clarity, I was failing at multiple things. I felt that I was failing at my marriage. I failed at the relationships with my parents, with my brother, with at work, and I just didn't know what I was doing wrong. And I was in that clouded vision for some time. And I told you this before that I write poetry, but in that phase when I wrote, I feel that I kind of channeled my pain and my suffering towards poetry, towards writing. I felt that because I have the pain, I have to write, and that it's like a scale that has to be balanced. But once I started getting the clarity, I started looking at everything very differently. I still write, but I do not write on pain. I write on a message. I write what I want to write, what I think is worth sharing. But it's no longer that scale where you put your sufferings on one side and you try to balance that with something else. I would say that because the clarity that I have now, I never had that in my life. And it surprises me that now people around me come and ask for directions, and I tell them that, if this is the way, and I can see what they are going through. I can see it with a clarity, and it now actually goes back and resolves certain things in my past as well. I can share that story if you like. It's a very interesting one.
Yes, please.
So it was before COVID. It was September 2019 when I lost my father. And I live in Australia, and my father was in India at that time. Before he passed away, I was mad at him for something, and I didn't speak with him for a couple of days. It was just a couple of days. Like, I think I had an argument with him on a Monday, and he passed away on a Sunday morning. And I struggled with that because he passed away so soon, and there was an unresolved guilt and grief combined together that was heavy on me for a very long time. And when I started building emotional intelligence, I go back to the moment and I have the clarity that this is actually what happened. And if both of us, me and my father, if both of us had that clarity at the time, maybe we wouldn't have had this. So it gives me that explanation as to what happened. So it's no longer unresolved. I know what happened. And that gives me peace.
What was the clarity?
The clarity is, I was thinking from emotions. There a lot of times who we are, as we say, that self-awareness is a big pillar in emotional intelligence. And if it is not built, if it hasn't formed or shaped up, then you get startled by things that are not real. As in, you get into that subjective view as opposed to being objective on certain things. So now I know that what he told me, he didn't mean anything ill for me. And I was reacting, maybe like how we say flight or fright or freeze kind of a response. It was probably a freeze kind of a response between us for a couple of days, and he passed away. And now when I look back at the moment, I feel that if I had this clarity, I wouldn't have frozen, and I would have spoken with him, and I would have been with him, last couple of days. But there is no point blaming either of us for that.
And how long did it take you to realize that?
5 years.
What came between that and your revelation?
Yes. So when I started reading about emotional intelligence, initially I didn't understand that. Okay. So my first goal was to understand my anger and frustration, anxiety, all of that. So it started working in different layers. So the initial layer was gone in some time. And then I was still getting angry on some things, not as often, but still getting angry. Then I started asking these questions to myself. Why am I angry? What is it that I'm keeping inside that is wounded? And then I worked on myself in a couple of layers, so to speak. And then when I started going back to events in my past, which could have become, how do I phrase it? Let's say an internal bruise that you're keeping inside. And I realized that, okay, this is what it is. And there is no need to keep that now. And I chose to let go. So emotional intelligence not only resolves your present, it can resolve your past if you are careful about it, if you know where to go.
So, what was your process of balancing those emotions?
I have to share something else as well to explain that question. So this somatic workshop was the beginning of last year, I'd say. And the year before, I had a few surgeries, and it gave me a stress that I didn't. Of course, nobody wants that in their lives, but uh, I was not sure what's going on, and I put up a lot of weight, and I was not sleeping well, and I was not going through a very good phase. And something happened at work. Since it was 2 years ago, I think I can talk about it. So one of my colleagues, and was supposedly a good friend, raised a concern that I made fun of her when she was expecting a child. And I said to her, look, I have a family, I have a daughter. In my conscious mind, I never make fun of a woman who is pregnant, but everybody else around us took it very differently. And I found it very hard to accept that what just happened, because if that is true, then I'm not who I am. So I had a very difficult physical health issues, and then this happened, which started questioning who I am, and I didn't take that well. So I was flooded by negative emotions, always thinking, what am I going to do to come out of it? I was just barely surviving day to day, but I was under this pile of weight, and that's where kind of I was very, very angry. And when I started seeing things, then it came to me that, if I know who I am, and like how I make sense of others in the world, other people can also make sense from my behavior. They can interpret me wrongly, and their interpretation doesn't make my values or my morality wrong. And which is when I started building the peace. But still, I didn't know what to do with the negative emotions. Okay. And this is something that came up from a lot of reading and journaling and, introspecting, is that if I am meditating, if I am trying to practice mindfulness, what is it I am actually doing? Okay. Because it's not possible to control all negative emotions or all negative thoughts. You get positive thoughts and you get negative thoughts. What to do with the negative thoughts? This is something that, I kept that question for me a very, very long time. And then this is something that came up from, talking to people on the channel, and of course through journaling and everything. That if there is one question that I can ask is, am I safe? If you have that answer that I am safe, then all these negative thoughts, they will come, but they will pass. They will not clot. They will not attach onto you. So I still get upset, or I still feel, sometimes maybe lonely, or can be in number of things. But I know that they will not stay. They will pass on. They will come and they will go. And this is something one of my wonderful guests told me, that think about being in a room which has a door in the front and a door in the back. That is the state you are in when you are meditating. You are not controlling your thoughts. You are not saying that I'm just going to think on one thing. That never works. Let the thoughts come, let the thoughts go. And which is, I would say, is the balance, that it's not like you're choking your negative thoughts. That never works. That is not how things are supposed to work. So you are welcome to get negative thoughts, but you ask that question, am I grounded? Am I safe? Which is why if you see a lot of mindfulness books, like they exercise the techniques and the strategies that they share is, strong, like stand firmly on the ground and feel your shoulders. Feel that groundedness, and then you will feel safe. Your body feels safe, and you can form that bridge between your mind and body. Does that's my understanding.
Well, I like that. Yes, you had your baseball bat moment, but it almost sounds like you found your way there in a quiet way. Like it was almost humble.
Yes. See, I mean, culturally, I have, been in schools where they tell you that you have to meditate and you have to do these things. And when I was younger, I never understood what it was for. Okay. So I think at this age, I have come to realize that, meditation is about, that connecting with yourself, feeling that grounded, feeling safe and secure. And I took my awareness to understand something that was inexplicable to me as to why my father was bitter before he passed away. So he accumulated that bitterness and he never worked on it. And I was also like him. I was accumulating bitterness until I was 42 years old. And then gradually decided to let it go. I'll share this because it remember this. I was telling you that I can relate to this as something heavy on my shoulders, right? That it was like a physical sensation. Yep. And because of that, I used to feel that it's very funny as well. Okay. That I used to feel that I cannot go on very long drives. Okay. So would not go anywhere that takes more than 1-2 hours. And when I started building that awareness and started feeling light, the first thing I wanted to test out that theory is I told my wife that let's go on a day trip, and I drove for like 7-8 hours and I felt nothing. So I could see that the anxiety and the frustration and everything that I was holding on to, that burden is gone. I am a new person.
It's funny that I think you're demonstrating that emotions have physical, what's the word I'm looking for? Manifestations. So was it your wife became ill after that? Is that right? Is that right
No.
on the timeline?
My wife had like 3 phases in her life when she got overwhelmed by schizophrenia and OCD. And I didn't know what it was. So twice it happened before we got married. And then we got married and we traveled for a fair bit in India and in UK. And then we came to Australia. That was first couple of years of really busy period. And we had our baby. And then she got that third phase when she started going through a very difficult mental health challenge. And this lasted at least a good 5+ years, I think, between 2018 to 23 maybe. So it lasted a very long time. Whenever it took some time to get diagnosed as well. Because when she was going through this phase, then she used to imagine unreal scenarios of harm. Like, for example, the first thing she thought that, somebody made her sign something in a paper and that is going to give our house away. Okay. Then she thought that she lost all her jewelry. Then she thought she lost all our money. And it was completely unreal. Okay. And I was trying to explain, no, none of that has happened. Look, this is where it is. And it didn't comfort her. And then we started seeking medical help. And now I know what didn't work is mental health is such a puzzled piece. I mean, even everyone working on, like, even people working in medical field, it's not very straightforward. It's not like a equation of 2 + 2. So she struggled with that. And when we were going to doctors and therapists, and nothing was coming out of that. And then I was trying to, take care of the family and do everything. I was putting myself at the back burner of everything and saying that they are priority and they have to be all right. And because of that, there was zero self-care moment, and I was burning out and I was angry and frustrated. That is what has happened for a couple of years. And gradually, when I started getting like some specialists to understand what she was going through, and she started the right medical help, let's say. Like, we were going back and forth with many doctors, but with one doctor, we found that proper diagnosis happened. And then she started feeling better. And then I fell sick for about close to 1 year, which is when all these things happens. Her health and my health. That was my difficult period.
Most, it's something like 7 or 8 times more likely that a man will leave if his wife gets ill. What happened that you stayed? That's an imprecise question, but I hope you understand the meaning of what I'm trying to get there.
So, in Indian culture, there is something very similar to wedding vows. So, in one of the ceremonies, you have to say that as long as we are married, I am responsible for you, for your well-being. Okay. And when my wife was going through that period and I was asking for help, everyone in the family, first of all, the taboo of mental health, of course. Nobody wanted to understand this. And everybody said that, yeah, you should leave your wife. It's not working out and whatever. And then I used to, whenever I had time with myself, I used to think that this is what I said, that I'm responsible for your well-being. And I am not going to stop trying until I have tried everything. So it might not have worked, 9 out of 10 times I have probably failed. But that one time I succeeded. And I felt that that was worth it, all the failures. And now that I have this lens of EQ on top of it, then I feel that nothing is failure. It is just a redirection. So option 1 doesn't work. So option 2 doesn't work. Option 3. So I probably have failed as many times before, and that realization came and after. But after, it's just become easier to understand, how to take the next step after failure.
So that's where your segment "Fail With Me" came from.
Yes.
Can you explain that? Can you expand
sure.
on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So when I was in that phase and I thought that I'm failing at multiple streams, okay, and I was fairly angry with people at work as well. So there is that. So, and then I was going through this phase and I had no idea why my wife thinks that she's threatened when everything else is fine. And whenever I asked my friends or family, I told you what they said, basically end the marriage. When I started looking at any motivational books or, writing anything, it said that you are doing this wrong and you have to do certain things to do it right. And I felt that, hang on, I am doing something that what I think would work. So you are just trying to be a speaker and you're saying that everybody else who's struggling is doing wrong. What if someone is struggling, they're doing the right thing, but that's not working out? Okay. So that's why I picked the title "Fail With Me," because everybody says, come succeed with me, come rise with me, come, 10 steps to turning your life around. And I didn't connect with that narrative. I felt that if I am failing at something, it doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. So I thought that, I'll pick the title "Fail With Me." And then gradually it started showing me that, what we are labeling as failure and we are putting in a box, that's not failure. There are many other things in that box. And once we open the box, once I understand what it is, then we have this clarity, this wisdom that makes life beautiful. And that is my context of "Fail With Me." And I ask everyone who joins me on the podcast, what do you think that you have failed? Does that title "Fail With Me" speak to you? Because I'm not preaching anything here. I'm just saying that it is absolutely okay to fail and then have that lens of compassion on ourselves or whoever has failed.
That I'm on a journey of entrepreneurship right now, and what I'm realizing is exactly that. And that's a skill. Not a lot of people have that skill, is being able to fail a million times and then one time you succeed. And it can be, it's one of those things that really tests your centeredness, is failing so many times, because it's so easy to get in your head or in your emotions of, I'm a loser because I didn't succeed at this. But you, when we talked before, you said when your wife started to come out of her illness, you said that felt magical. Can you talk about that a bit?
Absolutely. So at the peak of her illness, she stopped talking to anyone, like even not just outside family, even with us. And she used to have the same food for lunch and dinner every day. And she stopped consuming any protein, and she wouldn't let me cook, where she said, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat. And she was on that. And I knew she was struggling with something. Okay. And I just didn't know what it was. So now, when she started coming out of it, and I started understanding, okay, so this is what happened. And now she has like she's working and she's very active, and she's coaching our daughter from time to time. And I think that schizophrenia has that she had three peaks of that in her life, and that has impacted her other abilities, like sometimes anxiety, sometimes cognitive abilities and things like that. So she took a break from her studies twice when this happened. She was younger, and then she took a break from everything else in the world. But when that passed, she started enjoying and participating and engaging, which is what is magical, I would say. Because in schizophrenia, and my wife was in early stages of schizophrenia. When luckily it got diagnosed and she got put in the right path of healing, I feel that it didn't escalate further. So after the last time, when now that she's going through the treatment, so our doctor said that, if you do not do any further experiments, if you, like, for example, if you should not stop your medication and things like that, then it should not recur. So you have passed that window in which it can recur. So I feel I see that as magical, because at some stage I never thought that it would work, it would turn for the better. So that's how I see it, as magical. And I feel that her struggles has given me this wisdom and compassion that, if I share it with the world in an authentic voice, then what if somebody else is going through something similar and they be benefited from it?
I like your phrase. This is inspired by the quote, "If your daily life seems poor, do not blame it. Blame yourself for not being poet enough to call forth its riches." So I imagine going through those challenging times really forced you to look more within, which connected you to your heart, which allowed that connection to come out, or allowed that voice to come out, I should say.
Definitely. And this is so I felt that the bridge between physical health and mental health as well. So I was struggling with my physical health for around that time. And then that's because I was thinking emotionally, I was thinking under stress, under cortisol, adrenaline, whatever. And then once I started seeing things clearly, now I make sure that I have a window for myself. And then I have built this into my routine, that I go for a walk. And that walk is my meditation. That walk is nourishing and grounding and questioning things. And now that I have built it, I feel that I cannot go back to the old ways.
Stage one is no fun, is it?
Yeah, it's not fun. Yep, it's not. And this is something I get asked from my friends and people around, that we feel we are stuck, and what is it that we do it differently. And I tell them that it's not like going to the doctor, that you go to the doctor one day and then everything else is fine and you have healed and you have interrupted that cycle. You have to work on it, and you have to build that into a routine. You have to build that into a habit. It's not like I healed yesterday and that's it. I don't have to do these good things for me today.
I like what you're saying there about your friends. They've got to want it. And most of them, I find, don't. A lot of people just don't. They're happy enough running away from bad to good. They're happy in that life.
And this is something, what we do for interrupting our cycle is, just give a probably bad example, but when you are stressed, then you go and have a drink at the weekend and you think you're good, you're recharged and everything. But that's not what it is. If you are building your healthy practices and your mindfulness into your routine, whatever duration that is, you don't need that compensation. And this is something I was referring to earlier as well, that I had that extreme emotional duress, and I was thinking, oh, if I channel that into writing, I'm good. No. You have to solve the pain at the source. None of this pain exists outside us. Everything that we feel is pain. It is inside us. Whether it's a relationship strain, it is stress, it is burnout, everything that is, that's something we are keeping inside. I have had a recently very interesting conversation with my brother. So he said that he's stressed out by some people at work, and someone asked me some questions. Someone asked me and invited to a meeting, and then I got triggered and I got angry. And I tried to explain to him that, what you're feeling as anger, it's something you have inside. It's not what they are. They are reminding you, or they're maybe giving you the triggers to your nervous system, so that kicks off. And if you deassociate that for a moment and if you work on yourself, you'll see that you are good. I mean, you have no reason to be triggered.
You have no reason, but you're going to get triggered anyway.
Yes, correct. Yeah, unless you work on it, unless you resolve it.
So you've been doing this podcast and interviewing around failure. What insights do you have around failure now that you've done this?
So a very wonderful insight that I never thought was, possible, or was part of my understanding of EQ. Let's say, let's pick up something that we haven't talked about until now. Okay. And this is something that me and my brother, we bond over quite a bit, and that is generational trauma or generational memories. Okay. So there are certain things. I'm not a medical person. Okay. I just do not know how the biology part of it works. Okay. But we are often wired in a way our previous generations thought. So we were talking about some certain things that our father used to get triggered about, and we then used to get triggered about. So this made me very curious, and I feel that this sense of insecurity. Okay, so if you're not practicing any form of mindfulness, basically you're not addressing that insecurity. And that can lead to some repressed memories. I am not using the word trauma because what if somebody had a perfectly normal, childhood, but still there can be issues that got passed on from previous generations. So it is quite possible. And the thing is, you don't need to be critical about it. So long as you understand it's there, then you can work on it and you can resolve it. It's just, you need to have that compassion that, okay, this is something my father did wrong, but I can resolve it. This is something he got from his previous generation. He didn't get a chance to resolve it, but it's in my capacity to resolve it and, pass on that positivity. So in my Fail With Me is I talk about failure from different angles. And, sometimes it is professional life, sometimes it is relationships, sometimes it is parenting, sometimes it is self-awareness, like imposter syndrome, things like that. So if we go back to the root cause of it, sometimes we may not have the root cause in one generation, sometimes it can be generational, is what I'm saying.
I had an argument with my father at one point, and I said to him, don't speak to me like that. Please don't speak to me like that. Please speak to me like I'm an adult, like I'm a man. And he said to me, this is the way my father treated me, so this is the way I'm going to treat you. And that stuck with me because it's such a clear indication of generational trauma. And I do use the word trauma because I do think that's what it originates from. So I don't know that I hear you on the compassion, and I absolutely do have compassion, but I also believe that there's a saying that I really like right now. It's that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. It keeps going on in my head. You don't have to finish the work, but you can't abstain from it. So it's all of our jobs to look at, to experience, to see what we don't like and try to do better for the next generation. And I think most people do that. Maybe they don't not all to the same degree, but I think most parents do that. There's some parents who don't, and shame on them because they're abstaining from the work. But I like what you're saying about that.
Because I wanted to be, doing this creative writing since I was as a child, and I was told that you cannot do it. You don't have what it takes to, write, or you don't have what it takes. You sound very bad and you shouldn't, speak much and things like that. And so this is something, now I look back at it and I can tell that it came from some fear in their head. It has nothing to do with me. Okay. And it took...
You're depersonalizing it.
Yeah. Yes. And interestingly, when COVID was in full swing, my daughter said that, I want to learn to paint and I want art and to, go to art classes. And then everything was under strict lockdown here and I couldn't. So I couldn't find a class. And I said to her that, you get started with your painting. Just paint whatever you want. If it's good or bad, don't think about it. And I encouraged her for couple of years, and now she has found her confidence in her style and everything, to go ahead and do her own art stuff. And now she says that I don't need a teacher, I just need to practice and find inspiration, and I just need to know the technicality. But I got started on that way. I'm just saying that, this is something that stopped me when I was younger and took me a very long time to realize I can write, I can sound well, but I had to do a lot of work. It's maybe 20 years or something to get to that comfortable style of writing. I see my daughter today and she writes in her flow, paints in her flow, and I feel that I have stopped that flow on effect from one generation to another.
Broke generational trauma.
Yes.
What's one thing? All right, I want to wrap this up with the last question, and I ask this of everybody. What's the one thing you're grateful for the journey you went through?
To the universe, because I got thrown into these challenges by the universe, and then I found the ways to come out of it. And that also happened because universe put me in touch with the right people at the right time. So there is definitely that. I mean, I have had friends who I have grown apart from over time, but then I found new people where energies synced up, and there was a lot of learning, and there was this bridge. There's a to and fro of, let's say, ideas, entropies. And so I'm thankful to the universe for putting me in touch with the right people at the right time.
I love it. Thanks for your time, Abhra. I love your story. And
Thank you, Jeff.
I've always enjoyed our conversation. So thanks again.